Good morning. My name is Marnie Penny, and I'm a math instructional coach with Program and Learning. And this morning, I'm going to go over Jamboard and its applications in math. So I'm going to turn on my present so you can see my screen. And I'm hoping you can see you're presenting to everyone's screen. There are two places that you can find Jamboard. The first one is on your Google Chromebook, and that would be, if I get rid of these little things right now, over here at your waffle at the top right. So if I click on that and I scroll down, you'll be able to find Jamboard there. The other place, and I would recommend doing this, is at the Google Play Store. So if you go into the Google Play Store, and I just list Jamboard, it's going to come up right there, and you'd be able to click on it and then add it to your Chromebook. And I already have it, so I don't need to upload it. But when I click, I just move my screen up here, you can see all the applications on your Chromebook that you've added yourself. And there's Jamboard, which I've added already. So I'm going to open up that one. And this is what my Jamboard looks like. Because I've already been playing in this for a little bit, I have some jams already listed, but yours would be completely blank. And then down here on the right is the plus that you'd be able to open up a brand new jam. So if I go on the plus, it says creating new jam. This is what an empty jam would look like. And it's very similar to a slide deck in that you have your main frame up here. They call them frames instead of slides, but I apologize now if I use the word slide. And so this is what it looks like. But instead of having your frames populated here on the left, it actually populates them at the top. And if I just click this little arrow, it will expand it and open it up for me to be able to see. And as you know, right now, I only have just one. But I would have the ability to add more. So I can add extra slides or frames, as you can see. And then I have the opportunity to do some other features, which I'll show you in a little bit. The reason I would add the app is for this reason. So in here, we have the writing tools, but the app allows you these extra assistive drawing tools that adding from the waffle doesn't seem to have for you. And I'm going to go through some of those and you'll see the purpose of them, but they're a feature that you might be using a lot. And so I would include that. The other things that it has on the app is it includes stickers. So it's great if you wanted to give student feedback or add some of these other frames onto your board to sort of break up your screen a little bit. And additionally, it also has the one where you can add in drive content. This allows you to add in like whole slide decks, or in Google Slides, you could add a slide from Google Slides. You can add docs and that sort of thing, rather than just an image, which is the only capability with the one from the waffle. So I would definitely be getting the app for that. I'm going to go in, sorry, just go back into here. And I'm going to go into my welcome. It has some things populated, so I don't have to add everything, but I can show you some of the features of Jamboard this way. So in Jamboard, we have the basic writing tools. You have a pen, you have a marker, a highlighter, and a paintbrush. And then this is your paint palette that you have here. So you can see what those look like. But additionally, by having the app, and here's some things I was just playing around with, you would be able to add shapes and words and other pieces. And so with your tools, you can add things in, but I can also get rid of them. So I can erase, but only if I'm just using my writing tool. And so I could be like, hi, and then I can use my eraser and I can erase, and that seems to take a long time. But if I use my select tool, I can actually highlight all that I want to get rid of, and this is stuff I did in another presentation, and it will actually clear it off the board. Additionally, I could actually click on this and then just drag it down using my select tool, and it will also get rid of it. If I've made a mistake, there's a back key, so I can push the back and go, oh, I really didn't want to lose that. And so it will bring your last few steps back. So I can even go back further and get rid of things. And so it'll allow you to retrace your steps if you wanted to do that. With these assistive drawing tools, which are really fantastic, I'm going to show you how I can click on each one and it's going to do a different thing. So I want to actually do a text. So I'm going to, and I'm using my stylus, but your students or you could be using just the cursor, your stylus, or even your own finger to be writing on either the Chromebook, iPad, or your phone. It's all touch screen, which is really fantastic. So I'm going to just write math. And it's going to predict what I'm saying, and it's going to write the words there for me. I can even use cursive. Let's see if this works. My cursive may not be so great. It's wonderful. And so then it puts it together and you have your words. I would recommend doing one word at a time and letting it populate, and you'll see when it highlighted with that blue. That way, when I click on my select tool, each word is separate. Because I did the is wonderful in sort of one stretch, it recognized it as two words, but it's put them together. And so now I sort of have those locked together and I can't really layer them in different ways. But you can, if I go back to the tool, actually delete things. If I want to delete just this word is and put it on its own, I can actually cross this off and it will get rid of it for me. And so now I could go back and I could write, okay, is, and now I have it as separate components. So I can go back to my select tool and now I can move, whoops. And sometimes it does that too. And you can just make sure you do your back, right? It just, sometimes it thinks that you want to put things together. And so there I can maneuver things around much more easily. So I'm just going to get rid of some of this. The other one is the shape button. So if I go back to my tool and I click on the shapes, it only does 2D. It doesn't recognize 3D when I tried it. So, but it's still a great tool if you're wanting to add in different shapes and that kind of thing. And you can still write over top of these with your pen after the fact. So I can make different spaces around my board if I wanted using these shapes, which is fantastic because then I also have the ability with the select in being able to increase the size and make a bigger writing place if I wanted for my students, or break up the screen using those shapes. So that's a great function. The other one is the predictive shapes. And so if you're not one of those people who feel like they can make really great pictures to be able to give to their students, this auto draw does it for you. So I'm going to just make like a little bug here, what I think looks sort of like a little bug, even though it's sort of, see, they predicted it could actually look like a snowman. But I'm going to like, oh, I kind of like that ant. And so it switches it to the ant. But until I push this check mark, it doesn't commit to that ant on my board. So it's not there permanently yet until I click on that check mark. So I can actually look through and see what else they've offered as a chance for me to make something. So I'm going to just scroll through and look for other things that I might want to use. So it's like, oh, and they have this cute little bee. So maybe I want the bee instead. So I'm going to click on that one and it's going to change it to the bee. And then I'm going to push my check mark and now it's on my board. And if I go to my select, then I'll be able to maneuver it. I can increase it with my 2-point fingers, and clicking on my snowman, I can actually duplicate it, or I can even delete it. So I can make copies, which is great if you're doing different story problems for your students, because that allows you the capability of doing something like this. So now I've created a what do you notice, what do you wonder kind of a task, and all I did was duplicate and move them around on my frame, and I made some cats and rabbits, and much better than my drawings would have been. And it also allows me to change my question. So how I did that was by going, if I'm in this frame, I can go up to here, click, and this one's highlighted. And this allows me to do different things with the frame. So I could duplicate the frame, delete it, or I could change its background. And so show you the background thing quickly. It allows you to do dots, even graphing or a different color, which is kind of nice, right? And you can apply to all of your frames or just the single one. So I'm just going to leave it at white, but I do want to be able to duplicate my screen so that then if I go over here to my next one, you'll see it's the exact same one. But now I can take these questions out, delete these that I've put in. And now I have the ability to change this question into something else. And I'm just going to delete this one because I'm at the max for my boards and I can't add anything extra. And so I didn't mention this, but there are 20 frames max that you can be creating. So that's all right. But here's what else you can be doing. I'm just going to get rid of this because that was my example. I wanted to use this picture again, but I wanted to create a different problem. So I've actually created the problem here and it has the text. Unfortunately, unlike Padlet, you can't do an audio. So it wouldn't be able to do a voice to text and you wouldn't be able to read it out loud. But if you paired this problem sort of with a Google Meet, and so you met with your students, you would actually be able to maybe read this out loud to them while they're working on it, meet with a small group to do this problem. I would recommend when doing a jam that if this is my frame, I wouldn't want maybe more than a pair of students or up to 5 students working on any one frame. I'm going to show you after how you can make multiple frames within a jam to give to your class. But if this was the space, you really wouldn't want a whole class working in just this space. But pairing it with a Google Meet would allow you to be able to do that auditory, which would really help with some of your English language learners. Additionally, you could also, which I've shown down here, you could scaffold the questions that you give your students to be able to support them if their first language is something else. So this, for example, if I had a student who was speaking Arabic, I could either think of the key vocabulary that I think they might have trouble with in English and give them those words in Arabic using the Google Translate app, which you should download and put onto your computer. It's a really great function to be having. And that way you can just insert the words, or for some that might be just my level 1 learners, maybe they need the whole question actually read or shown in their first language. So I've actually duplicated it, and maybe I would give both these slides just like this, and so my whole class could access it. Or maybe I would just populate the slide with just the Arabic and give this slide only to that student, right? If you wanted to declutter a little bit, you could reduce it by making different frames for different groups of students. So that's a possibility. Sorry, didn't mean to get out there. I'm going to jump around a lot, it seems. I'm going back, though. I want to show you how we can get that frame now as a picture. So if I click on it, it's now actually just a movable picture that I can use. And so what I did to do that was when I was in this frame here, I'm going to go into this one. So this makes a copy of your entire Jamboard, but I don't want all my frames copied right now. I just want this frame copied. And so I'm going to share this frame as an image. So I'm going to click on that. It's creating my image, and now I have a place to share it. And I can either save it in my Drive, or I can actually add it to Google Keep. And while we're here, I'll just mention quickly, if you add something to Google Keep, this is a way where if your students have already worked on a frame and they've already answered a question and they've written on top of it and answered, and you store it in Google Keep, you now have a way of documenting the learning of your individual students and being able to keep files underneath their name. But what's also nice about the Google Keep is if you download that app, either onto your iPad or your phone, and you go into that one, they have an recorded voice recording audio note keeping. So you could take the image, give feedback with verbal, and then send it to your students and be able to have them hear your feedback while they're actually looking at their picture and what they might have been able to do to move them forward in whatever they were answering on their slide. So that's really great. I'm just going to save this to files for right now. And so that there's all my downloads. And I'm just going to go, yep, save. Okay, so now I've saved it, which means now I can go over to this space here, and I'm going to click the plus, and I'm going to insert, I'm going to do the image library, and I'm going to look for that image. I'm going to go to my recents. And it's going to have, there's my picture right there. And it's a really small thumbnail. So using your 2-finger touch, you're just going to squeeze your page. And if I click on that, now I have the ability with my fingers to be able to open it and grab it a little bit bigger. And this will just snap back to its original size. And now I can position this on the whole page, or I can position it there. So I copied the one that had words on it. I probably wouldn't want to do that if I was creating this into a different question, but you get the idea of what you're able to do. And you can do this with any image that you've captured. So being able to pull things out, as you can see, I was able to pull in a question from Marianne Small's Math Up that we were working on, and so I could put that one in. I can also, here's like a number line that I created in Mathies, which was more professional than if I was trying to take this drawing tool right now and try and make a straight line. It's not bad, I could do it, but this just makes it a lot clearer for students. And so you can bring in those kinds of visuals, or even like a math image if you were doing like some kind of a number talk and you wanted to be able to give these to the students. And by duplicating, it's really great because you say, what is the best way to count the bicycle wheels? And you can see I've written right over top of it, but that's exactly what your students would be doing. And so you'd be able to give them this frame and be able to work on it. And then I could even duplicate it and say, show me another way. And so then they can maybe show you a different way of counting. And so that instead of showing it by 2s, like maybe they're even ready to say like, okay, well, I can maybe count by 6s. Right? I'm not sure. So that would be a possibility of being able to use those pieces. The other thing I'm just going to show you in a regular one is that you can also add content from your drive. So it's going to go right into my drive, and it's going to usually, I'm just going to go to the recent. And you see, and I actually have my Jamboard slide deck. So, and you'll have access to that. I'm going to select that, click select, and now it's put it into my board. So again, I'm going to use that 2-finger touch. And there, I've sort of made my slides a little bigger. And while I can actually click and drag, and I can look through my slides, and I can pick what I actually want to bring into. So I can drag that out, and if I don't want the rest of this, I just wanted that single slide, I can either leave it there if I thought my students were using it for a purpose. Otherwise, I can just get rid of this by deleting it, and it's gone. But now I have, go back to my select tool, this one slide that maybe I wanted to bring in. Right? So I can create problems in Google Slides and then drag my problem in, which allows you to be able to add a whole bunch more into your frames. So it's really great with what you can be able to add. Now, also, I want to talk about how you can make this workable for your students. So this is meant to be a collaborative tool in that your students would meet in at the same time, maybe in pairs or maybe in a small group, and be able to work on something in real time. And they can actually see as each other is working in their problem. And so being able to work together that way is fantastic. And you might even pair yourselves with them. And that way you're there. And if you're in Google Meet, you can verbally walk them through or give feedback as they're working, but you can also observe who's doing what part in a problem while they're working on it. So here's one I created just quickly. It was a 3-act task by Kyle Pierce that I've done. And so I have my title page, and then I have these pages populated with the problem. And you can see I have like Frank and Alec working on this one, and Kenny and Mark working on this one, and Peter and Billy working on this one. And so I have my students populated into each frame so they know who their partner is and they're looking for their workspace. So in order to do this, I've created a masterclass list, and I'm going to actually copy this so I'm not taking away my master. And this is what's going to make my problem. So I have my class list, and now I'm going to add a new frame. And here's where I would create my problem. So I would put my problem in here. So I'm going to go plus, and I'm going to look in my image library because I maybe have already saved the image of the problem that I want to use. I'm going to go recent. I'm just going to, well, let's just say we were using this problem, and that's fine. So again, it's a thumbnail. So I'm going to click on that with my select tool. I'm going to enlarge it. And so this might be my how many, and I might leave it big enough that they can actually work on this. But let's say I wanted to have them work on this in partners. So I'm now going to duplicate this one. So I'm going to copy this so that I can have enough for several groups to be working on this problem. So there's my problem. I populated it. And now I'm going to go back to my class list. And I can click this down. And so I'm going to just slot my students into their groups based on how I wanted them to work. So I'm just going to throw in some friends. And it just slots in really easily. And then if I go and look at this one, they overlay on top of each other, so you are going to have to move them out. But now my students can come in, look for their name, and go, okay, that's not mine. I'm going to click on the next one. And it's like, Alex, like, oh, okay, there's mine. So this is my group, and I'm working with Mark today. All right. And so they would be able to see the question and be able to find their spot, which is fantastic. You might want to consider adding in some success criteria. So before actually the problem page at the beginning, you might actually want to, I have an example. Oh, sorry. It's all the way at the end. Oh dear, I don't know where it went. That's really interesting. I don't know what happened. Try this one, sorry. No. I had things in different places. It's in this one. There we go. So you might want to, at the beginning of your frames, the first frame might be inserting something like this, like a 1-point rubric. So the kids understand what the success criteria is and what they're aiming for in that activity. So this is one that my colleague made. Emily Wagner had made this one. And so here was the problem that she had pulled from Math Up around multiplication. And so it says like choose numbers for the blanks so that set A is just a little more than set B. And she has some instructions there, and that was the problem. But then here was the success criteria. And so including that would allow students as they're working to go back and go, okay, have I demonstrated all this learning in my answer? And they would be able to sort of keep track of how they're answering that question and sort of that like that own self-feedback before, and then you would actually, after they've done the problem, be able to fill this in to match. And so that would be a possibility. The other thing you might want to consider at the end of your frames is adding something like a small exit card or possibly a student feedback form like this one. So things I learned today, there's a lot. If this says 3 things, I might not be able to write all this in, but your students have the ability of adding those sticky notes. And so they'd be able to add in 3 things in there because they can type it out and then they could include it things I found interesting. This would probably be more of a junior example, but it's just something you might consider adding at the end of your frame. And so they'd be able to give that feedback about their learning that day and how comfortable they felt with the task that they were doing. So being able to add those pieces in those frames at the front and the end are really helpful. With collaboration as well, I'm going to show you in this one that students also have the ability to be able to give feedback in the classroom that you're providing with this Jamboard. So because I showed you this example where there was a problem and all the students each had their own frame, this would be a lot like your thinking classroom if this is something you were doing in the real classroom, in that the students were used to being able to see what other students were working on and being able to feed off of their demonstration of strategies, and then maybe they brought that into their own learning. So here's one that I did just as an example. So Peter and Billy were working on this problem and they made a table of values, and the students were able to drag in like just a thumbs up, like maybe they really liked that strategy. And so they were giving support to Peter and Billy to say, wow, what a great strategy. And then I just added this sticky note. Mark put his name on it and he sort of added this equation. And so to sort of push their thinking a little bit further, or maybe it was where he was taking his thinking. And then Carrie came in and said, oh, please explain. So that allows maybe for a conversation, especially if you're in a Google Meet, where Mark might be able, we might be able to come back as a class and look at Peter and Billy's board, and Mark might be able to explain his thinking and share it with Carrie to build her understanding a little bit more as well. So there's opportunities for feedback from teacher, but also from other students if you have them working within a same jam, but just maybe they were working on different frames. It allows for that to happen. And that's really what this whole tool is built around, is around collaboration. I think I've included almost everything. I want to show you this real class example because I really liked this. This was off of one of my Twitter people, Michelle DeFipolis. And so she said I could use this. So here, this was a grade 8 example. And she, before this, had done modeling with her students and had met them in a Google Meet, and they had been talking about different patterns already. So she gave them this question, and it had all the things that she was looking for in their, when they had to go and solve this on their own. And so, is the pattern an example of direct or partial variation, and why? What's the first difference of your pattern? Which term number will have 233 tiles? And so they had to go in and create their own. And so here's a little bit of their work. So this is an actual class that's actually used Jamboard. So this was one student's workspace, and you can see that she gave instructions and also put them at the top. So again, this is where you could differentiate by maybe translating, using Google Translate and putting this in different languages for the students for the instructions if need be. But these were all done on the sticky note, which then allows the student, it said, you can get rid of these sticky notes once you're done with them. Right? Because all boards are manipulable. So if I put something in, it can be deleted, right? And so if I had this and I wanted to, I'm going to clear my board, and I'm like, oh no, I erased all my work. There's the back function, which allows you to bring back anything that you erased, but your students can then get rid of the pieces that they no longer need because maybe they've already included it in their thinking. But you can see how this student included a graph, a table of values, added some images of things that they were drawing on paper, and they were able to put it all in. They were able to annotate on top of it with the drawing tool. They were even able to highlight key pieces. And then the teacher was able to come in and give feedback. So this one just said everything looks great, but there's a couple others in here where she actually gave specific feedback. When I say cool pattern, very creative, right? Giving something really positive, and then going in and saying, careful here, your points don't match your table. Term 0 should be right on the y-axis. And so the student would have the ability, with the graph being there, they wrote over top of it, to use the eraser, be able to erase that piece, and then go back and actually respond to that feedback and fix where they had sort of gone off track a little bit. So this was a real example of teacher feedback and based on what a student had presented. And again, this would be great to be able to copy. So I could actually copy this one, right? Like I said earlier, and then I can save it into my Google Keep notes, and then I have a documentation of their learning from this graphing activity. So there's so much you can do with Jamboard. I do have link right next to this is my slide deck, which gives some more tutorials on how to walk through certain pieces. But if you have any further questions at all, please don't hesitate to email me, Marnie Penny, and I would be able to help you out with anything that you might have. So I'm going to get out of present mode. And I just thank you for checking this out. And I hope that Jamboard can be a success for you and your students, and especially in this virtual time. All right. Thanks so much. Take care. Have a great day.